In this video, I'm just going to do some more examples of combining or adding like terms. So in this first example, we have a -1, we have an x, we have a +1, we have a -x, and we have another -x. So we're going to first of all put anything together that can cancel. So the +1 and the -1 can cancel. The positive x and the negative x can cancel. And so we're left with just a -1x or -x. And let's look at that to make sure we understand it when we're just looking at the numbers. So our -1 can cancel our +1, our x can cancel our -x, so our answer is -x, which can also be written as -1x. So either one of those is fine for a way to write your answer. In the next problem, we have a 1, and we have two negative x's. So think about what you would be doing right now if you had to represent these. And then an x, and then a -1, and then two 1's. Again, anything that where we have opposites, I'm going to drag on top of each other to cancel. So think about what we have left here. If you're thinking that we have a -x or -1x plus two 1's, which is 2, then that's correct. So again, let's just look at the numbers because obviously we'll end up using just numbers eventually. 1 and -1 cancel. A -x and an x cancel. So you see we have one -x and two 1's left. In the next problem, now in this example, I've already combined all of the like terms and I just want to see if you understand how to represent them. So how would you represent 2x? We'd have two 1x's, right? And then how would you represent that being added to 3? We'd bring down three 1's. Pretty easy, huh? In the next problem, how would you represent -3x? We'd bring down three negatives, three negative x's, and then we'd bring down two positives. And that represents -3x plus 2. In the next example, we have -4x plus 2, and I've already represented this for you. So that's four -1x's and two -1's. And then the last problem we have one -x, and remember -x is the same as -1x plus 1. So that's just a -1x and a 1. So now we're working with x's, y's, and 1's. Now here we have three different terms. We have terms that have to do with just constants, which are just numbers, 1 and -1 being added together. We have terms that have x's in them. So remember, x means some number. So those are some number we don't know, but they're the same number. And we have x, and then we have the opposite of that number. And then we have y's, and y's are a different number, and we don't know what this number is either, but we know it's different than x. That's why we have different variables, to show that they're different numbers, even though we don't know what they are. So here we have y's, and we have the opposites of y's. So for -x, we bring down a -1x. For -1, we can bring down a -1. For y, we bring down a y. For y, we bring down another y. X, we bring down another x. 1, we bring down a +1. And then 1 again, we bring down another 1. Now we're going to see if there's any positives and negatives that will cancel. Well, this -x will cancel that +x, and this -1 will cancel that +1. So we're left with two y's and a 1. So what do you think that equals when we put it all together? If you're thinking it equals 2y plus 1, you are correct. Again, let's look up at the numbers and see if we can make sense out of this. -x and an x will cancel, and a -1 and a 1 will cancel, so we are left with two y's and a 1. Let's look at the next problem. We have two -y's, so I'm going to bring down two -y's. We have a positive y, a positive x, a negative x, 2 1s, and a negative 1. Again, we're going to put anything together that can cancel. So this negative y will cancel that positive, this negative x will cancel that positive, and this negative 1 will cancel that positive 1. And here we are left with what? If you're thinking, we are left with a negative y and a 1 added together, you're correct. Again, let's look at the numbers. So negative y and y cancel, x and negative x cancel, and 1 and negative 1 cancel. And we're left with negative y plus 1. Here's some more examples. Let's just do these with the numbers instead of dragging. So I think you probably have that down by now. So we have a y and a negative y that cancel. You see anything else that cancels? Negative 1 and a 1. So what are we left with? We're left with 1x. So we can write that as x or as 1x plus what? Negative 2. Because negative 1 plus negative 1 is negative 2. All right, let's look at the following problem. We have a negative x and an x that cancel. Do you see anything else that cancels? 1 and negative 1 cancel. So what are we left with? We're left with a negative x plus 2 negative y's. So that means negative 2y is how we would write that. Now notice I always put everything so that I have my x's first, my y's second, and my numbers last. That's called standard form. So you'll see it in these other examples. And we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so let's move on. So it's really important that you understand what all this means. So when you see a problem like 2m plus 3m, we know that m and m are the same number. We just don't know what that number is. So it actually means 2 times some number plus 3 times the same number. And so we can put that all together because we have 2 m's and 3 m's. So how many m's do we have all together? That's right, we have 5 m's. So let's look at another example. This means we have one group of a number plus 3 groups of that same number. So A and A are the same number. Plus 2 groups of a different number. So B is different than A. So 2 groups of a different number plus 1 group of the same different number. So how many A's do we have all together here? 4 A's, right? And how many B's do we have all together there? 3 B's. We don't know what A and B are, but we have 4 A's and 3 B's added together. If we knew what A and B were, then we could multiply 4 times A, we could multiply 3 times B, and then we could add it all up. But we don't know that. So we talked about the number that is by itself, that doesn't have a variable, is called a constant. So that's just a regular old number. And standard form is where you always have your x written first, your y written next, and then your constant. Or it's in alphabetical order. So if I had some other variables, like let's say I have 2a plus 3b plus negative 5, I write this in alphabetical order with a's first, then b's, then my constant. So that's called standard form. So now let's do some examples where we're going to add like terms and write the answer in standard form. So no more pictures. Now we're going to apply what we understand. So we're going to add our like terms. I like to underline my like terms. It helps me to visualize. So we have our x's, we have our constants, and then we have our y. Now I'm just going to add all my like terms. So I have 2x's plus 6x's. So how many x's do I have? 8 x's. Plus, and next, what do we want to put? We want to put our y's, right? How many y's do we have? We just have 2. There's nothing to add to that 2y. There's no other y's. And then last, we want to put what? Our constants. So how many constants do we have all together? 3 plus 1 is 4. And that's our answer. Now let's look at the next problem. Now here we're going to want to write everything using addition before we get started. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative 8a plus negative 2b plus 8a plus negative, and you can write negative 1b if it helps you, or you can write negative b because it's the same thing, plus negative 2 plus 3 minus a negative is plus a positive plus 2b. If you want, if it helps you, you can always rewrite these problems so that you have your a's together, your b's together, and then your constants together. You don't have to, you can just underline them. It just depends on your learning style. So why don't I add that extra step in here? I'm going to put my a's together. I'm going to underline before I do that actually. So here's my a's, here's my b's, and here's my constant, my two constants. Okay, so I'm putting my a's next to each other to help me, and then I'm putting my b's next to each other. And I'm going back and forth from writing negative 1b to negative b just to help you get used to the fact that they mean the same thing. But you can write it either way this year to help you get used to it. Eventually you'll drop the negative 1 and write just negative b. And I'm going to just make sure that I have everything. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I should have 7 terms. Each part that's added together is called a term. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 terms. And I'm saying, in case you can't understand me, the word terms. All right, so now let's add those like terms up together. So we end up with our a's added together, our b's added together, and our constants added together. Negative 8a plus 8a is 0. So we have 0 a's, so we don't need to write any a's down. Negative 2b plus, those cancel to equal 0. Negative 2b plus positive 2b will also cancel to equal 0. Well, that's convenient, huh? So we're left with negative 1b or negative b plus, and then negative 2 plus 3, what does that equal? That equals 1. So that's our final answer.